Okay. All right. Welcome back, gentlemen, and to the discussion. Having Professor Naomi Damba, who is the Vice Chancellor and CEO of KCA, is also Professor for Defense and Foreign Policy. Joining us, we have Dr. Oliver Kisaka, he's a chaplain and lecturer at African International University. Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, conflict resolution and security expert, and Macharia Njeru, the chairman of IPOA, joining me in studio. Let's take this discussion to Mustafa right now. What's happening in the face of what Macharia is saying? Because the reports from both police and civilians reporting this. And of course, the question that I will have asked Macharia, when you say that if they tell you that you're pushing, if you push us too hard, we'll be unable to work on this. Just answer that briefly, and then I can go to Mustafa.
You see, the thing is that we serve members of the public, apart from, of course, also the police who complain to us. Now, remember that when a police officer, unlike a military officers take orders. Whatever they do, they act on very specific orders, do this and they do it. But a policeman, when he's on the street, they operate on different parameters because at that moment, it is them to make a decision on their own, whatever decision that they take. And they are answerable, they are accountable as an individual at that level because it's not dependent on the orders.
They're supposed to wait for the operation commander to give them orders?
No, that's in terms of planning an operation.
Okay.
That's what happened. There's an
paint for us order. The picture of the street protest. There's a street protest. Yeah. There is the commander who's in charge of that operation.
Yes.
Yes, who's supposed to take care of the operation there. And when the first tear gas is thrown or is lobbed, who gives that order? Is it instinctive from the police officer, or they're supposed to wait for?
No, we're talking about two different things. I was saying generally.
Oh, generally, okay.
Besides the issue of them, because demonstrations is just a small part.
Yes.
Remember, we rarely have demonstrations anywhere in the country. A large part of security arrangement is on the day-to-day Bobby on the beat, you know, police patrol and all that.
Okay.
And when a policeman is in the street undertaking their duties, at that moment, if he sees a crime being committed, he will not call his seniors and tell them, I've seen a crime being committed.
Yeah. What should I do?
What should I do? I mean, really, it's not practically possible. So they make a decision. It is them to exercise their discretion, but within the parameters of the law.
Okay.
Now, what will usually happen is that when you're investigating these cases, you find that there are many times when the police engage on shootouts, for instance, with suspects, or situations that really also put their lives in danger. Now, what the major complaint they've had against IPOA is that sometimes we must be alive to the fact that they're also policing a very difficult society. Sometimes there are people who are not, who don't observe fidelity to the law, and they themselves are not only in danger, but also the members of the public. And consequently, we must be alive to those circumstances, even as we are investigating them.
All right.
Because if we push them too hard, according to them, then the easiest thing for them to do is then, in order not to be taken to court, is just not to pull back. Now, who becomes exposed if that happens? It's the same members of the public. So for us, we have to walk in that thin line, knowing very well that we must balance all these issues.
Dr. Mustafa, it's an open discussion. Anyone can talk about it, but let me go to Mustafa. It's an open discussion now.
Yeah, Ken, the thing here that is overriding in this country at this point is respect for institutions. Now, if we have institutions in place, independent institutions, we must allow those institutions to work. And we have seen that the members of public are now interfering with the work of these institutions. The case of Awasi in Nyanza. The moment you go there and threaten an official of IEBC, that first of all becomes criminal. The moment you pick that stone and throw onto an opponent who has a different ideological position or different political position, that then becomes a political extremism. In fact, then it becomes violent extremism. Now, Njeru has explained to us here about the way the police works, and has said that we have members of the public that have been brutalized by the police. Now, the police should not use excessive force on demonstrators. That we have to underline. The second point here is that members of the public, if you are going out to demonstrate and just to throw stones, then you should just stay at home. The moment you throw that stone, and Njeru has said that there are police officers who have been injured, and some might even die. Now, these are the same police officers that we will depend on for our own security. Now, there are few police officers that would overstep their mandate. This happens from time to time. And it is the work, I guess, of IPOA and other agencies to look into their conduct. But the members of the public should never taunt the police, throw stones at the police. And we are seeing this happening as if we are normalizing violence in our politics, moving towards a political extremism. If the police are not going to contain this, then people will think it's normal, and we can as well become a failed state. Let me talk about the issue of national security here. When all this is done and we have widespread violence around the country, and the police then is unable to contain the widespread violence, as we saw a little bit of it in 2007, then we are moving towards state failure. And then there will be massive killings, Ken, and there'll be more blame on the police that they are not responding to lawlessness from the public. And then at that time, all these legal arguments, constitutional arguments that we've been having over the media will actually be set aside. We are not going to have them if we are going to be in moving towards a war situation. So Kenyans had better be careful. And our political leaders had better be careful in the manner that they are pronouncing edicts and rhetorics. They must first of all allow those institutions that are mandated by the Constitution to actually do their work. IEBC is one of those institutions. And now we are seeing Akwambe resigning. That is not a good thing for the country.
All right.
Ken, I think this is the reason why increasingly more sober Kenyans are calling the president and his team to meet with the former Right Honorable Prime Minister and his team. They ought to realize that for you to rule, you need to rule a country that is peaceful, that is stable, a country where people have opportunity. Now, if there's no trust in IEBC, especially majorly from one side, there's no trust in the police, majorly from the other side, what you are seeing is loss of trust in institutions that ought to be functioning for the proper function of the country. When that happens, the principals must call their troops back and tell them, wait, let's sit and negotiate. There must be a way out of these things. If we do not negotiate, we are creating a situation that even the principals themselves will not be able to manage. And so really, at this point, leaders are known by their capacity to reason, to stand up for what is firm in times of crisis. I think the two of them must actually bring all things back on the table. And I want to say on national TV this morning, this Nusumkate language is actually demonizing approaches that have helped this country in the past. In 1963, 64 situation, President Kenyatta then realized that if the country was going to continue along this Kanu-Kadu divide, we are not going to make the progress that we require. They called people together, they discussed, they said, this is our country, we are just independents. They came together. Should we call that Nusumkate, you know? This new constitution that we enjoy today would not have happened if people came together in government. And I have been on record in this session to say that my evaluation is that this winner-takes-it-all situation doesn't seem to be working for Africa. Not just in Kenya, but in very many contexts. And we ought to be able to sit down to evaluate our reality as a Kenyan people and to wonder what system works for us all. Okay. At the root of this problem, Ken, is that there is a group imagining the possibility that for another 5 years, they will not be anywhere near power. That's what's at the root of this matter. There's another group imagining that if that group takes over, we will be thrown out and we will not have access to what we enjoy. So both of them really seem to be saying that the presidency is what serves us all in terms of our participation. If that is the case, and you are almost at 45 to 50% range on both sides. I think it is time for leaders to lead their people to the table, to face the reality and to agree that if we continue down this direction, we are not helping Kenyans.
All right.
Ken, part of my security training, I've taught law enforcement in major universities several times. There are several things here that we have to take in consideration. One is the recent demonstration in Germany at the G8 conference. There was no one person killed or hurt. There was a huge demonstration in South Korea regarding the president until she resigned. No one was killed in that demonstration. There was a huge demonstration that just ended in Spain. Again, there was no person killed. Here's my point. There are two conventions that are very, very important in guiding international convention that guide police behavior. Number one is the UN Convention, and number two is the Commonwealth Human Rights Convention 205. Let me return back to our police system. Police is part of the discipline force, and they are expected to follow law and order. There is no any other time except when their lives are threatened, when they can react in a different and lawful manner. Here's the point. Most of our police are disciplined folks. They're very good people, and I know many of them. But like Macharia said, there is a few bad apples in our police system who are behaving like marauding thugs and trusting the very good name of the police that we have. The convention, the UN convention, said two major things. One, the use of force in dispersing non-violent and lawful assembly should be avoided. Number two, it said firearms should only be used if there is less dangerous means are not available. And then the Commonwealth Human Rights Convention is even more specific in the use of lethal firearms. There are all measures that need to be taken in order to do that. That is expected out of our police force. The citizens must not taunt the police in cases where you are confronting each other. The citizen must not know that throwing stones in times like this is going to invite reciprocal force that end up with collateral damage. Collateral damage, children are killed, somebody innocent is beaten up, and that kind of thing. So both sides must be lawful, and that's the area where we are getting. Are our police trained enough? Do they have continuing law enforcement study? And are the public prepared for this kind of environment? The point is, the previous election that we know in recent history has been violent. We knew that the environment where we are right now. So the police force must be ready, and the public must be ready for the kind of election that we are having.
All right.
That's the environment.
All right, Macharia, as you answer, talk to us the fact that the police with their training should be held with a higher responsibility than the civilians, even in cases where there's trouble.
Definitely, because you see, the difference between the police and the public is that the police own and manage the instruments of violence. So because of their position, that they have the guns, they have the law on their side, they have to be held to higher standards. And it's precisely for that reason that we'll usually take them to court. As we speak now, Ken, I can tell you, as IPOA, we have 51 police officers in court charged with various offenses. 2 of whom have already been convicted and are serving a 7-year jail term. And many others, various stages of cases in court, because they're expected to be held to higher standards. There are also very many we've cleared. When you've looked at the circumstance and say that really, in the position they were in, they could not have done anything different, from what they did. But let me say this. Our current situation is a political situation. The dispute that is revolving around the issue of elections and the consequent demonstrations and all these altercations and all that, they are mainly political issues. It is only that police now are coming in because they have to deal with the issue of maintenance of law and order, and also the passions that surround the whole demonstrations lead now to these fights sometimes between the police and the members of the public. So we still have to deal with the underlying issue of the politics around it. But having said that, I think also we must admit that we as the professionals, the people who are managing the institutions, the people who are in our respective positions, not necessarily even in public institutions, wherever we are, because even for us here in this panel, we are all professionals by our own right, including you, Ken, as a member of the fourth estate. I think it behoves on us to be responsible and just to do our work and make sure that we send the right messages, because we do not want to be in a situation, because what is happening is that people in various institutions, we end up, instead of doing our work, we become now politically aligned, which in itself is wrong, because we just do our work in whatever institution that we are in. The way I look at it also, like for instance, seated as the chair of IPOA, I should just do my work. It should not matter to me about Jubilee or NASA. I should just do my work in accordance with the law. I should not be doing something, for instance, to condemn a member of the police service so that I can please the public. Again, I should not let off the hook a rogue police officer so that I can please the police. I should just do my work, regardless of how anybody else will react to it, in as long as I stick to the very strict parameters of the law. And that's what we should all do, whether in IEBC, whether in IPOA, whether in the media, wherever we are. Because when you listen to many people speaking today, even wherever they are, people are taking positions depending on where they feel that they are aligned, which is wrong, because we must remember that we have a country to look after. And we have nowhere to go to. Probably Rosalind could be fortunate because she has another passport. For some of us, we just have one passport. You and I, we have nowhere else to run to. I have only one Kenyan passport. So there's no way I'm not going to do my work because I'm aligned to anybody, when remembering that all the sides, whichever side they belong to, they're all Kenyans. And beyond the elections, they'll still be Kenya. We have to be right here, even after this election, because we have to get through with this election. So let nobody be partisan in their thoughts. Just do your work and do it professionally, in strict conformity with the Constitution, and also knowing that we have a country to protect. And we must have that election. But I can't possibly see how, speaking as a lawyer, I cannot possibly see how, because the crisis that would come after that would be even bigger. Now, because I'm also a lawyer by my own right. I cannot possibly see how you can go outside the law, the order of the Supreme Court, which says about 60 days. I cannot possibly see how, looking at the very strict provisions of the Constitution, how you cannot have an election. Because if you don't have it, then you have a bigger crisis. If you have a bigger crisis, then you are telling the police to come and clear the mess, and they have no capacity to clear that mess, because this is politics. Police don't police politics. Their work is to maintain law and order. If you tell them to get into the realm of politics, you are telling them to go into a very uncharted waters, which they cannot manage. Not even IPOA will manage it. Not even the police. Nobody will manage it. So we must ensure that we do the right thing to prevent the breakdown of law and order.
All right.
All along, Ken, it's been just challenges in the political domain that have been handled by the Supreme Court. The lawyers have been arguing their cases for or against. Now we are moving towards a political crisis. This problem is escalating. Now we have to de-escalate the situation. One of the ways to do that, to de-escalate, is to make sure that all the constitutional provisions are actually met. One of those is to have an election. If we are not going to have an election on 26th, then this problem is going to be escalated. We will now move towards a constitutional crisis. And there will be no pretense when Kenya is in a constitutional crisis. Given the kind of politicians that we have in this country, given the kind of crowds that we have in these countries that do not care about institutions, that just want to, people want to be violent. And Kenyans haven't seen war yet. Kenyans have not seen what war is. And if Kenyans are wishing for war, then we will be regretting what we are wishing for. So we have to de-escalate this situation. Now, it's up to you, Kenyan. What is it that you are going to do to de-escalate this problem of getting into a political crisis and ultimately a constitutional crisis? Are you going to be that person or politician that is going to pour more fuel into the political crisis? Are you going to be that Kenyan that is going to throw that stone to try and hurt another Kenyan? Are you going to be that Kenyan that is going to try and hurt a policeman? Are you going to be that policeman that will overstep your mandate to hurt another Kenyan? We all have to be responsible. And we have to tell Kenyans these things. We cannot afford to move on the slippery path towards a full conflict, Ken. Okay. And Njeru is saying that we all have to be responsible in whatever we are doing, all sectors across the country.
All right. Even as you speak, Professor, I'd like you gentlemen, especially Njeru and Mustafa, now that you've commented about it, elections must happen because then we are heading to another crisis, according to the two of you. I don't know what they think, but I'd like you also to reflect on the fact that regardless of how that election happens, it has to happen.
Ken, my colleagues here have stated very clearly, this is a political issue requiring political solution. You cannot solve political solution by law enforcement or by any other means. We are degenerating. And there is what is called externalities. Externalities are the dynamic within the system or outside the system which define who you are. What we are right now is that most of investors are leaving Kenya, going somewhere. What we are now is local investors are not investing. What we are now, the university systems are disrupted such that students cannot expect to graduate and continue with their life. What is happening is the common man, Mama Boga and all that, are confused because their distribution system is disrupted. There are people today, Ken, and I was meeting with the kids from Mathare Valley, Korogocho, Kibera on the weekend to help harmonize them. The people who don't care about their life anymore because the system cannot relate to their need. And therefore, these people will become very dangerous as we recede to this. It calls for leadership. This is the time call. I was in America when the beer drinking uneducated white men and confronted the Harvard professor who is a black man. And that almost came to a national civil war. And simply what Barack Obama did was to call those people to the White House for what we call now beer diplomacy. And after the beer, all the pressure was subdued and the country moved ahead to where it is today. The time has come for these two leaders to do exactly what Barack Obama did at that particular time in order to disengage us from degenerating into a worse situation.
My comment on this, Ken, is that I expect both parties or all the parties involved to be constitutional. What is constitutional right now is that the Supreme Court has made a ruling. It has given 60 days. It has said it's IBC to run the election. We must not break the Constitution. That's right. Both of them must be constitutional. If you break the Constitution at this point, what do you have left? And yet that's what you are relying on to want power. Why must we go to an election? It's because if we don't go for an election, we will be unconstitutional. The constitutional thing to do is to then go back to the Supreme Court and say, you gave us 60 days and it was not properly done. And the Chief Justice told us, if these things come here and they have not been done constitutionally, I will rule the same way. So, are these people committed to the Constitution? They have all the time preached to us, telling us, Constitution, Constitution. Are they committed to the Constitution? They must stop abusing each other. They must stop taking Kenyans for a ride. They must follow the Constitution if they want this country to be safe. If they break the walls that we have set up for ourselves for protection, what do they expect is going to protect the country? That's what they must wrestle with. They are two leaders, and history is very unforgiving when people are careless the way they handle their offices.
Gentlemen, I'd like you to just respond to that fact. You say, Daktari, that we go to the election. Once the election happens, then if it's not happening the way it's contemplated in the Constitution, then you have a recourse. You can go back to court, yes, and it will be addressed. And it looks unanimous. Now, I want you to address also the fact that the what in your statements is what are we doing right now as the people who are against, the people who are instigating the current state of affairs, who do not want to go to the election, who will definitely be causing this constitutional crisis by calling for this, who are the people who are right now calling out on their supporters and saying there's no election. They only need to say there's no election and their supporters will react the way they react. Now the question is, the what? What are we doing currently to ensure that we don't go back to the Supreme Court? I mean, it's time this is solved. It's done once and for all. Is it the conversations that Naomi Damba is saying without any preconditions? Is it doing the right thing? Is it the resignation by Akombe, who is saying that the commission as is and with the timelines and with the prevailing conditions right now, we cannot hold an election, a free, fair and credible election? Anyway.
Yeah. For me, I would say the chair of IEBC has done the right thing in a number of ways this past month. He's been going back to the Supreme Court to ask for interpretation. The Constitution didn't even give the Supreme Court the right to go beyond 60 days. This is a constitution we gave to ourselves. This constitution has only one commission, which is charged with the responsibility of holding an election within these 60 days. If we don't hold an election within the 60 days, what will Kenyans have on the table? There will be nothing. So the only constitutional thing to do right now is to say we have been constituted as a commission.
Okay.
We may have our flaws, whoever may be seeing which flaws, but let's hold an election the way we need to. And for me, therefore, it's unfortunate.
The way they need to, or the way the Constitution
The way
contemplates.
the Constitution contemplates.
Yes.
And even the papers today, the chair is saying we are ready to hold the election. The only way you can prove that statement is to let him hold the election. Okay. All the people around the country that support whichever camp must know that if this commission is today unable to hold this election, they have no recourse constitutionally. It will be chaotic for them, much more chaotic than it is today. If a new if the entire IEBC was to resign today, it will put us in a crisis that the Constitution does not anticipate. Really, because it would have to be on the Solomonic wisdom of the Supreme Court to give instructions as to what ought to happen in a situation like this. Right. So there are no easy options. And I think for me here, the two principals have got a great responsibility to realize that we can easily push our own people into extreme chaos that we are unable to handle. And we must come together around the table, and we must not come with any preconditions. Let's not cast aspersions on one another. Let's come around the table and say, put these things aside. Let's look at our country before us. What needs to happen for us as a country to be able to move forward? We only have a few days left, and both of them must take their leadership responsibility seriously.
And the few days left is 7. Anyone wants to?
You see, the thing is that let's assume that there were flaws in the elections on 26th. Is it like there will be no recourse after that? Obviously no, because one can still put in a petition in the Supreme Court, the same Supreme Court, and object to whatever the flaws. So to me, it's not like the window is closed altogether. But it is much, much more worse and I'm speaking now from the perspective of what would have to deal with in terms of maintenance of law and order. It is much worse if you don't have that election, because then there's a vacuum. We will be entering into uncharted waters that are not even provided for under the Constitution. Which is the problem we are in now. The Constitution never envisaged a scenario where you don't conduct elections within the timelines that are provided. And particularly now that there's an express Supreme Court order. And that is as clear as a daylight. That's why we're saying that it is much better for IEBC to be given that room. Let them conduct, because they themselves have said, including Roslyn. I read in the media the other day when she was in Kisumu saying, is all systems go. And also the chair of IEBC has said the same thing. So they must be held to that statement. And it is incumbent upon them as the only institution that is permitted in law to conduct an election to just make sure they conduct that election. Okay. They just have to do it, because as IEBC, if they don't do their work and they choose, for instance, to jump ship, how do they live with themselves after the event if we have chaos in this country? Because you must also look, there must be a situation where you must look inside and ask yourself, when I was required to do the right thing in the interest of the public, in the interest of the country, what did I do? Okay. Because that's the question I'll always ask myself as the chair of IPOA. At that moment, did I do the right thing that best serves the public in accordance, again, of course, with the law? So let me say this also about this issue of the public. You see, when members of the public, I was just asking myself, when they stand there in full view of cameras and say, we will not allow officials of IEBC, will not allow the employees, they're even beating them up and all that, I was just asking myself, what are police expected to do in those situations? Because what basically you are saying is that I'm ready to even injure somebody, I'm ready to cause mayhem. Then if police move in, then you don't want them to move in. This is not to say that the police should break the law, because let me repeat very clearly that no matter the circumstances, no matter whatever happens, any police officer who breaks the law, IPOA will hold them to account. Not because it's a matter of choice on our part, because that's what is expected of us by the law, that we must hold you to account. If you break the law because a member of the public has broken the law, we will not take that as an excuse. We'll look at the circumstances, and if the law demands that, if there are facts and evidence that demand that you face the courts, we'll make sure that it happens that. Not because Macharia Njeru has said it, because the law has said it. Okay. But it is also not right for members of the public with this reckless abandon to even say it, even in full glare of the cameras, that we are not going to allow the officials to be here of IEBC. We'll attack them and then make it appear as if it's normal. It is not normal. Is that our problem, Macharia, now? No. Is it our problem that we show this? No. A fair comment on this. Is it our problem that we went ahead and broadcasted that? What? No, definitely. The media has a responsibility to put it. I mean, as a media, you'd also be failing if you don't. If you didn't. Okay. Yeah, you'd be failing. No. You are actually under responsibility. I'm just saying that for those members of the public, I'm addressing the members of the public, not the media. The media has to do its job. It's your responsibility to inform the public of whatever is happening, regardless of who is saying it. But I'm just saying that the members of the public, for them in full glare of the cameras, to say that we'll beat up somebody, we'll do this, we'll do that, to me, that is reckless. Okay. It doesn't mean that the police now should also move in and do the same thing. Because again, that will mean two wrongs can't make a right. Because the police, as you said, are held to higher standards. All right. But it is important for the members of the public themselves to also have fidelity to all of us, not just, and we are part of the public. Okay. We must observe the law, the members of the public must observe the law, and so is the police. Professor.
Ken, this is a political issue. The public are reacting to political shenanigans. There are people we elect from MCA all the way to the president called honorable. These people work on behalf of the country, on behalf of us. They set the tone of dialogue or misdialogue. And so the point is, what I'm urging the elected official, it doesn't pay now to go and put gasoline on the fire, because the public is ready, they are organize, they disfranchise, they can create more damage to our beautiful country that we have taken years to build to reach where it is. Tone down your rhetorics and select the words you use in public for the cause and for the leadership, for the leadership of these countries to show resolve for responsibility to what happened to the ordinary person on the street.
All right. I don't know, we need to close this topic, but this falls on Macharia once again. Just a 1 minute comment on the fact that what happened in Kisumu, especially the policemen. There's several pictures that I bet you have seen it. First, let me understand, if the complaint is not brought to you by a member of the public, you move in to investigate yourself.
We actually move in not just based on complaints from members of the public.
Okay.
It's also on our own motion.
Motion, all right. And what happened in Kisumu, the allegations? One, the people who are shot, the student who is hardly 2 days now dead, the one who was shot and allegedly a policeman used knife to get the bullet out of his neck.
We've seen that allegation.
Yes. Have you got the complaints?
Yes, we didn't even need to wait for the complaint.
Okay.
Because actually what we also do is that we have a robust complaints department that also goes through, you know, all the information, social media,
mainstream
media.
Yes.
We pick all that. In fact, a lot of complaints that we pick, we even notice them from the media clips. Like, for instance, recently the young girl in Muranga who was defiled by a police officer. We saw it from, you know, it was, you know, mentioned, I think, in Daily Nation.
Daily Nation,
and
yes.
We pick a lot of, and we moved in immediately.
Okay.
And collaborated with the police, and that officer was charged in court, and we are taking it, you know. So we do that all the time.
Okay.
The same thing also with the Kisumu cases. Incidentally, we have an office in Kisumu, which has been there, and most of those cases, we are on top of them. We can assure the public we're investigating them, and we'll be able to get to the root of all those cases. I said that investigations sometimes take time, but ultimately, under Section 25, we are enjoined by law to make sure that we investigate all cases where there's allegations of death or serious injury caused by police. We don't have an option. The law says that we shall investigate, and we must make sure that we not only investigate, but whatever the outcome, we must also inform after going through the process of the ODPP, because the ODPP has to be involved. Okay. We must also make public whatever it is that we found out. So that we must be able to do, because failing to do, though, to be dereliction of duty, and we're not ready to do that as IPOA. So we are on top of it, and we'll be able to get to it. Not just those cases, but every other cases where there's allegation of killings by the members of the National Police Service.
All right. Gentlemen, I'd like also to speak about what happened in Lokichogio, the school that was attacked, and 6 students died, and the night guard, and also 18 students were injured. I also like to talk briefly about Mogadishu. We have friends, we have relatives also in Mogadishu, but as we wait for that discussion, let's get some feedback. There's a lot of feedback coming in this morning. Let's now speak to Usha. Usha?
Right, Ken, there is, of course, a lot of feedback coming in, and it's on a raft of issues. We have some people talking about Jimmy Wanjigi, but I think the most popular today would be the story on Commissioner Roslyn Akombe. So I will get straight to it. We have John Gidanga, who says Jimmy Wanjigi is a filthy rich, enigmatic entrepreneur. State agencies are harassing him for being the chief moneybag of NASA. We also have MD Omondi, who says just the other day, EU loaded IEBC preparedness for the repeat polls. I guess they never saw this, hashtag Akombe resigns. We have MD again, who says the resignation by Akombe reminds us of how we, the common men, are in the hands of few who do not care about our fate. We have Samuel, who says the credibility of election is the acceptance of electoral process by all involved, and already it is disputed even before started. We have John Gidanga, who says the present state of affairs is a clear indication that a crisis is nigh. It's just a matter of time before it becomes a reality. We have MD, who says the present state, this is the same tweet actually. We have MD, who says the JSU soldiers who camped in Jimmy Wanjigi home will soon be sent to Roslyn Akombe home searching for, quote, information. We have Stephen, who says the tragedy about her decision is that it will take a tribal, political and gender assassination of her character. I salute her. We have Clifford, who says, it's not that the pressure from NASA made her resign, rather pressure within the commission, kuna shida. We have, we have Sylvester, who says, Kenyans are peace-loving people, planted elements to stabilize peaceful demos. And this is actually a very beautiful photograph, because it is, of course, the citizens and police working together, civilians rather. We also have David, who says, no wonder Jubilee MPs were rushing laws through Parliament to lower the quorum. After Akombe, next is Chebukati, Sane Minds. We also have Ototo, who says, so Roslyn Akombe has learnt about withdrawal from Raila from election. We have Otiende Amolo from #AMLiveNTV, and now her from the commission. We have John Gidanga, who says, embattled Chebukati is standing between a rock and a hard place. He is under intense pressure. The buck stops with him eventually. We have Biggie, who says, face the pressure till death. You have to know when to stay and to walk away. Of course, this is in response to Macharia Njeru, who said, you don't resign, you stand firm and you face the pressure. And Macharia, I have to say, I have been seeing a lot of this type of tweets. There's a lot of questions on how far is too far, because, of course, Roslyn had mentioned that she has been facing threats even on her own life. So I don't know, because this is actually a question that a lot of tweets seem to be asking this. How far is too far, Macharia?
You see, the thing is, when I took my job as chair of IPOA, I keep saying that it's not that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I knew, in fact, not just myself, also my colleagues. And we sat down the first day we were sworn in and said, did anybody ask us to apply? And we all said, none whatsoever. We applied because we thought that we're equal to the task. So when you're getting yourself to these positions, as I said, it's not for the faint-hearted. I can tell you, personally, I did not apply because I did not have a job. I have a law firm that I manage that is still in existence. I was a chair of a board of a bank. I was in another board of a parastatal. So it's not that I was short of positions, but I said, I want to do this job in the interest of my country. Nobody asked me to apply. Now, so I've always been alive to that fact together with my colleagues, and we've all been alive to that fact through and through, that even when you're under intense pressure, that we are not going to jump ship. We are going to do our job, because sometimes when you jump ship, you're actually handing over on a silver platter the wishes of whoever wants you to resign. So you don't do it. Okay. Because after all, you're not in that job to serve an individual. You are there to serve the public. Remember, we have millions and millions of Kenya who depend on us. For me, that young girl in Moranga was defiled. It's looking upon me and my institution to serve her. A mother or a father of a kid who is killed by a rogue police officer is depending on me. In fact, for me, a lot of times when I'm thinking about my position in IPOA, it's not so much for those who are able, because they have access to lawyers, they have access to money, they can be able to find their way. It is those common people who have access to nobody. The person in Madare, the person in Kibera, the person in the villages, who have no access to that. And those are the people that I care most about. Am I going to abandon them? I will not do it for anybody. I'll serve my term from beginning to the end. And in fact, even when there was an attempt sometimes even to change laws that relate to IPOA, we said we'll still fight it, including in the courts, because nobody is going to remove us. So in IEBC, to me, and I'm not speaking as chair of IPOA, I'm speaking as an individual who is a Kenyan and who also has a stake in this country. It is not right for any of them to resign, because they should know the consequences of that. They applied for this job. Did anybody ask them to apply? There were many applicants. Among the many who were shortlisted and interviewed, a few good men and women were picked. So they should be able to do the job. And if they knew, and they cannot say that they were naive enough not to know what they were getting themselves into, particularly knowing that there was going to be a very short time that they had in their hands to conduct an election, and also knowing the circumstance under which their predecessors had been bundled out. Okay. So you can't say you don't have access to that information. And that's why I stand firm to say that as public officers, we should be able, if there's the truth in statements, you should speak out. To me, that is right. You should be able to, if there are any situation that you are facing, you should stand firm and say that these are the difficulties we are facing. If there's anybody putting you under pressure, you'll be able to say it. but ultimately be able to defend the institution and do what is expected of you in the interest of the public, because we are here to serve public interests.
All right.
Right. Well, I hope that answers for those who are tweeting on that. We have Wanaina who says this Roslyn Akombe resignation was long overdue. We saw it coming after August 8th election. And finally, we have Samuel who says, our responsibility as voters is to mandate our leaders to take us to the right direction, but they already have misdirected us to violence. Let me just read one last one. We have Carol who says, working under pressure makes you work harder and strengthens you. Right, so of course, as you can see, there's a lot more tweets, but in the interest of time, I will be reading only those ones. But their conversation does go on online, hashtag AM Live and TV, hashtag Decision 2017. That is how you can reach us. That is how you can get me to get the members of the panel to answer your questions. For now, it's back to you, Ken.
Right, Usha, thank you very much, and thank you for the feedback. I don't know if you want to respond briefly to the feedback, because we have two topics to handle in less than 10 minutes. It's okay? No one wants to talk about?
For me, I just wanted to say something concerning IPOA and the police. I think increasingly the challenge for the police is to first continue to act according to the law, but also to be seen to consistently serve all sides fairly. Because I think in the recent past, the complaints are more that the greater casualties are within the NASA strongholds. Nyanza people particularly have really paid a high price. There are chaos there, and we ought to hold them accountable. We need critical leaders to rise up in Nyanza to tell their people not to be destructive.
Okay.
What happened in Meru was equally bad.
Yes.
You haven't seen as much force in Meru as you have seen it in Kisumu.
Exactly, because yesterday we expected a lot of action from the police, burning of podiums, the tires and everything.
Yeah, so police, they have a difficult job, and I can't sit here to pretend to know what they should do. But let them create the impression and the perception that causes the public to trust them, because they have a great responsibility for our country. All
right, yes, and even yesterday, still at Jimmy Wanjigi's, because we'll not have time to discuss this, we saw the way the police acted. You know, you have one, the magistrate that gave the orders for search and seizure and for barring and arrest of Jimmy Wanjigi was not declared. We saw that. We never saw the name of magistrate, just signed and a seal of magistrate. Yet, when now the orders were sought and obtained, we saw the name of the magistrate, and you see, and the police were acting on the first order without a name. Suffice to say, there was no name; it was just magistrate and a seal. And the second order, which was more valid with the name obtained in an open court, was not acted upon. So that's double standards from the court. We have to speak the truth, you know. We have to speak. Macharia, you want to comment on that? Because we, just very briefly,
I'll comment about my brother here said, which is, I agree with him 100%, that it is incumbent upon the police to ensure that they get the confidence of the public. And when you talk about the public, we mean all the public, because there's no public. There is one tribe, and public there is another tribe. We are all the same public, and you all serve by the same taxpayers. The police must ensure, and this is something we've emphasized to them, right from their leadership, that it is their duty to make sure that they even hold discussions with the communities. Community policing will not succeed as long as there's no confidence and good relations between the members of the public and the police. It is their duty. And you see, one thing that, let me tell you, sometimes it is not necessarily something unique for certain communities and certain neighborhoods to be difficult. Policing, that is the nature of policing. All over the world, you find, because people are different. Okay. People also express themselves differently. And it doesn't mean that you criminalize how a member of the public is responding to a situation. You engage them. The ones who break the law, of course, you take action against them. Okay. But you must make sure that you engage them proactively, where you prevent situations rather than reacting to them. Okay. That requires serious strategy, it requires thinking, and it requires, you know, to me, it is all a question of leadership. The police themselves, and when I say leadership, I mean their commanders, must think very hard, because the policing of 21st century cannot be where you always wait for situations to arise, then you start engaging members of the public violently. You need to because do it you have intelligence, okay. You should be able to know how to, where there's going to be trouble, and you could even sometimes negotiate with the leaders. A police officer should be able to bring themselves down to a level whereby you speak with the community leaders, agree with them, sometimes when it comes to the issue of demonstration, even try to persuade them. It is the nature of duty of a police officer.
Okay, and I'd like to open this discussion, and as you comment on three things because we're short of time. Lokichogio, Mogadishu, and of course the way the police has handled this situation, and it goes back to Malindi. We saw them handling the bullets, the guns, bare hand, which means they were interfering with even evidence. You know, how did they know who handled it before Jimmy Wanjigi, if at all they were Jimmy Wanjigi's firearms? So comment about those situations. I'll start with, okay, Mustafa.
Yeah, Ken, with regard to Lokichogio, that was a very sad incident. And the young man who went back and killed his colleagues who they had quarreled earlier, quarrels do happen between individuals. The challenge here is the easy accessibility of a firearm for one to come and use it on their colleagues. That is where we have to question. We must ensure that firearms are not widely available for anybody to just go and pick and to use it in wherever manner they want to do. The issue of Mogadishu. We've said this so many times that it's so difficult, it's going to be impossible to vanquish any terrorist group on the face of this earth. And for any terror organization to remain relevant, they just need to conduct one terrible attack like the one that we've just seen in Mogadishu to continue to be relevant in the affairs of a country or a region. And therefore, we really have to rethink on the strategies that we use to address terrorism and violent extremism. It's very clear that Al-Shabaab is on its back foot, and there is significant pressure on it militarily to degrade and diminish their capabilities. But the ideological issues are still not being addressed in the manner that we should be seeing those ideological issues being addressed.
Okay. Professor?
Ken, let us take this issue from a broader security challenge standpoint, and I just want to outline a few. One is we have a challenge of modernizing and upgrading our current asset. We have politicized ethnicity in the country, crime as a threat to national security, extrajudicial killing is taking place, terrorism launch attack on economy, and political crisis that is evolving right now will have a very serious security challenge. Then the ordinary person is feeling insecure. And lastly, we have a porous border between Somalia and Kenya, Ethiopia, Southern Sudan. There are people who are coming into the country, either as a student, like this case of Lokichog, happen to be a trained military person who was there, and end up creating serious havoc to our country. Let's rethink, let's refocus on our broader security umbrella and what we need to do. And that can only happen when the political temperature is down and we have now time for development of our country.
Yeah, I think as a panelist this morning, Ken, I would like to feel for the families that have lost their loved ones in Lokichogio, and just pray that that God would encourage them. But as Prof is saying, this country, Kenya, finds itself in the context of a very diverse security situation, because countries around us, except perhaps for Tanzania, have had different levels of conflict, which, as we are emphasizing this morning on our television and pleading with our fellow Kenyans, we must not allow our country to go into. The fact that Kenya then reaches out both by United Nations conventions that we should be able to take in refugees and intervene on behalf of those that are underprivileged has exposed the country to other dynamics that were not anticipated. When I read this situation in Lokichogio, I was just shocked. I call it an attack on mercy, an attack on compassion. As a country, you open up your institutions to serve young people from the neighboring countries who are in difficult circumstances and do not really have a way of how they could make it in life. With clean hands, you know, just look at the situation. Nobody is expecting that a person who has been a student here can actually come back as a military fellow leading a small squad. So it's an unfortunate reality, but it calls Kenyans to wake up to that reality. The insecurity happening around us makes us require to step up our intelligence and our understanding of the dynamics that we are dealing with when we reach out. Mogadishu is unfortunate. We continue to pray that there will be a solution to this terrorist activity.
Talked about how the police handled the situation in Malindi, bare hands, nothing to shield that evidence, if at all, and points to something else. Because if you don't shield the evidence, then it points to something deeper than that, you know. So, as you respond, final response.
Yeah, I don't want to comment on that because I prefer to comment on something that I have facts.
No, this is factual, Macharia. We saw it, we filmed it on TV,
No,
even the policeman cocking the gun, bare hands. This is not how we handle evidence.
You know, I'm not a police officer
I know,
myself,
but just as
and
Kenyan.
we also don't interfere with the police operational issues.
Okay.
Precisely because, remember that if there was to be an issue,
It will be brought to you.
it will still be brought to me,
Okay.
so I wouldn't want to be
Understandable.
in a situation whereby I'm commenting at it. But by and large, what I would say as my closing comment is that we must be alive to the fact that we have a country to protect. And this country belongs to all of us. And we have nowhere else to run to. I'm not convinced that we are going to have a large-scale breakdown of law and order. I think we are behind. I can speak with authority from where I sit that I'm convinced that we will not see the 2007-2008 situation. Of course, we are entitled to be frightened because we've been there before, but I'm quite confident that we wouldn't be able to reach that level. Kenya has also grown, it has made strides. And some of these differences are also part of what we should be celebrating as the newfound freedoms under our constitution. It's a robust country. We're in a situation whereby we have a very independent media, we have a public that is aware, we have a judiciary, we have a parliament, we have all these institutions, and each one of them should be able to do it. What is extremely important, as I was saying, is that as we are navigating through these waters, let us all be responsible. Let us make sure that we must be alive to the greater public interest, because at the end of the day, whichever government is in power, it is not that they are going to serve me as an individual. I couldn't care less actually who is in power, because all I want is the conducive environment for me to be able to go about my duties, to do what I know best to do. But I'm not looking for anybody in particular to be in power so that I can get favors, because how many people are they going to give favors? So what we should be concentrating on as the people who are in the respective institutions, whether public or private, because both are important. It is not just the public institutions that run this country. In fact, the private institutions are the ones that run the country more. Is that in our respective positions, let us be responsible enough to do the right thing and ensure that we obey the law, and ultimately knowing very well that we have only one country, which is Kenya, which we must protect in our own interest.
Calling on the leaders, Ken, to work very hard to de-escalate the tensions that is growing and prevent this challenge from hurtling down the slippery path into a political crisis and ultimately into a constitutional crisis. It's very important that we stick within the constitution. Otherwise, this document here, this constitution, will not be worth the piece of paper it's written on.
Right. Dr. Oliver?
Two comments, Ken. The first one is that this country, believe it or not, is actually wrestling with the implications of the new constitution. And as I sit here, I'm just thinking, it's the principals who are unable to come down to the demands of the new constitution. If the new constitution demands that the Supreme Court plays a role, that the IEBC plays a role, that the police plays a role, if the new constitution demands that, no amount of extra constitutional means that these two principles apply are helping the country. So let them come down and obey the constitution. But secondly, from the religious side, I want to tell the leaders that there is a phrase that is known in Kenyan politics called Solomonic wisdom. That phrase arises from a situation where two women faced in a situation where one had lost the child, the other demanding that child. The king called the two together, put the child here and said, fine, divide the child up into two. The woman whose child it was not was very happy. Yeah, split the child between us. The mother said, wait, give her the child. I would rather my child is alive, even if it's in the other, in the other home. Which of these leaders is saying he doesn't care whatever happens to our country? We must, this is where Solomonic wisdom comes in, and good leaders are known by their capacity to lead their people to success, to prosperity, to peace. If they are leading us to chaos, I would say I'm not for that.
Okay.
Can our country, Kenya and my fellow countrymen, occupy a very important role and space in the development trajectory of this continent? Please join me to say two things that are very important. And above all, my tribe is Kenya, and my country is Kenya.
Right, a good point to end. I didn't see it being that brief, but I want to take this opportunity to thank you very much for coming and for sharing with us. Macharia Njeru. I missed Macharia Njeru because he's my editor. Macharia Njeru. Macharia Njeru. Thank you very much, Macharia Njeru, Chairman IPOA, for speaking to us. Dr. Mustafa Ali Yusuf, thank you for speaking to us, Dr. Oliver Kisaka and Professor Noah Midamba. Thank you for coming every Wednesday, starting on guard. And the conversation continues. Remember, we will be talking about the breaking news in the coming hour, at hour or two. We'll be talking about all these issues. But remember, as the gentleman here agree, the country is ours. We don't have any other country to go to. Thank you for watching, and Better Living coming up next. Stay with us. Good morning.